Hey guys, how are you? I am recording this, end of a very long day. My trying to still get my kids in bed and, you know, get ready for another wonderful school day with you guys. And as I was trying to frame tomorrow's lesson, I realized that we're going to be, if everything kind of goes with what I've been doing with Dr. Rosenberg, who is our ed tech supporter. She is supposed to come into all my in-person classes tomorrow for AP World and walk us through getting things connected for inquisitive and the textbook, not through like that's my other class, your Norton code in your book, but to actually make sure everyone is using their online textbook through St. Pius, not through their textbook. And so she's going to come and walk everyone through that's in person with those instructions so that she can kind of test out what she's thinking and then knows how to send screenshots to the rest of you who are at home. So I don't know how long that process is going to take. So I figured I would create a lecture on what I wanted to do with the activity involved and then create an ed puzzle both to help hone in points, but also create accountability so that you guys really give the time to this so you can get exposed to this very important AP skill. See if I can actually, there we go, move myself up. So we're working on the AP skill of the MCQ. And I have stated a lot this week that there is multiple choice that you are probably used to in other classes. I use multiple choice today on your chapter 1 reading quiz. And that's great and all, but that is not the type of multiple choice that you will see on the AP exam in May. And so to that end, they're kind of called by AP board, the college board, MCQs, multiple choice questions. But the MCQ is implied that it will always have the additional component of having a stimulus that will guide a group of questions or one question. Usually it's going to be 3 to 5 questions. And they will guide what those multiple choice questions will be like. So the only time you're ever going to have your old-fashioned multiple choice that's purely on comprehension and content is going to be those very large reading quizzes like you had today. But for unit tests and our actual national exam in May, you're going to be practicing a lot this year with MCQs. And so I want to expose you guys to that. And I have an activity that actually attaches to what we've already been doing this week so that the content is kind of with you. And you can kind of draw on that as we go through the exercise. So there'll be times when I say, hey, pause your screen before you would ever get to an ed puzzle question, because pausing your screen will allow my little, tirade of talking here stop and allow you to read. I am going to read through the questions just to see if that can help you a little bit, but then I'm going to ask you, hey, pause this a second, so that you can go ahead and on your sheet of paper that you're going to print, hopefully, you saw my email, so you know where to go get it. But I'm going to actually show you in a second with a screenshot. So you can work on your own paper and annotate and write all over the paper that you need. So you're going to need that for sure. So let's get going. All right. So going to my next page. Hold on. I always have the worst time on my laptop to do this. All right. So let me move this over. All right. I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger. There we go. Sorry, guys. You're kind of learning with me. So our overview on this is that teaching MCQs is hard. This is not an easy skill that you're going to be mastering this year because you are so trained for the normal multiple choice question. And we're going to kind of discover as we go through some of these, we're just like the tip of the iceberg today with this exercise that we're doing. If you've already, gone and printed before I tell you to, you'll notice that we're only covering 5 MCQs today. So think about the fact that you're going to have to do 55 MCQs on the national exam in 55 minutes. So that's 1 minute per question, and you have to read something or analyze something to go with those questions. So like I said, these are not our normal SAQ questions. So they're hard, but we're going to practice the skill and we're going to get you more used to it. Kind of like, a little bit of today's surprise with your chapter quiz to understand content. So to some extent, you're going to have to learn simply by doing them. I can guarantee that there will be unit tests or assessments. I'm not sure when I'll be giving full MCQs for grading while we're virtual like this, but eventually we're going to get back to them. So to some extent, you will learn by doing them. So we will create a lot of class activities around MCQs so that you get to practice with that awesome stimulus, that skill of like looking at a document with critical eyes. But oftentimes when we go over those unit tests, you're going to get so mad at me that I am not going to change what I have as the answer versus what you're going to tell me you want as the answer. And those are basically like the 48-50% questions where it is but like by a hairline that something could be right. And so you're just going to have to go with it because that's part of the AP skill work that they're doing. The coping, the critical thinking that's developing, et cetera. So all of that goes together. There we go. Sorry, guys. Okay. But we are able to walk through a lot of these tips together. In Unit 0, just this week, because chapters 1 and 2 are Unit 0, essentially, and part of Chapter 3, but then we're going to just dig on into Unit 1, essentially. You learned about universalizing religions, and then you learned about ethnic localized faiths. So this exercise is going to tap into what you've done. So it hopefully you're seeing that everything I do has a point and it's all connected for this impossible course that you guys have embarked on, just to help you build the foundation that will get you to where you need to be. So right now you might want to pause me and go, actually don't pause me just yet because I'm going to show you a screenshot. You're going to go get your file printed and ready. And you'll pause it on the next screen so you see exactly where it is. So you need to go print. You're going to basically be getting, like I've already been annotating mine. You're going to be printing. Mine's a little bit smaller to save pages for you, but it is essentially this lovely document. So you can go print that. And then I'll kind of, remind you guys of this, but when you're reading, you're going to want to annotate your stimulus and the actual question. So you're going to need to be sure that you are ready to dissect and write all over these pieces of paper. All right, so go print. I think I've already said it before, but you can pause me now, and then I'll kind of go back over those last couple of points. All right, so hopefully you're back. You've printed, right? And you hopefully stop this recording so that it doesn't go into your Edpuzzle question in a little bit and you have to go back. So I'm going to go back and look at these extra points back here. So at the bottom it says, as you read, annotate the stimulus and annotate the questions and look at question phrasing. We're going to discover as we go through these that it is extremely important that we look at the phrasing of everything. It will determine sometimes whether you get something right or wrong. So very important to kind of look at question phrasing. So hopefully you found it. There's the yellow line right here shows you exactly which file you needed. So pause me again if you did not get the AP Skill Builder MCQ, which is right by the lovely yellow arrow, right? Okay, so that's what we need. So our first two questions are based off of the same stimulus. So note up here at the top, I have this question is specifically asking about Confucianism. So while C is a correct statement, it has nothing to do with Confucianism specifically. So there's your first little hint as we go through, helping you eliminate. So I'm going to read together, and then you can always pause it. But obviously, when it's time for you to make your choice of an answer, you're going to show that answer in Edpuzzle. All right? So here we go. So source, this is the Gospel of Matthew, New Testament of the Bible. Quick note, sourcing is very important. That's going to be a whole other lesson. are actually many, many, many lessons, but it's really important that you look at the source of the document that you are being asked to study, because eventually we're going to be learning about point of view, bias, intended audience, etc. When we start looking at these stimuli to go into document-based questions. So just kind of look. And obviously we're seeing here that this is the Gospel of Matthew, New Testament of the Bible, something you're probably familiar with. Now, when he, Jesus, saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." So question number 1 says, Christianity grew in popularity in the centuries after it was founded because, so go back, annotate A, B, C, and D. Obviously, you got a hint on C. And make sure you also are totally annotating this document. For number 2, like I said, eventually you're going to have to pause this and then answer an Edpuzzle. The message in the passage would be most similar to the teachings of the founder of which other religion? That would be Hinduism, Confucianism, Taoism, or Buddhism. All right, I would go ahead and pause this and annotate. Right now, take whatever time you need. As I said, eventually we're going to get to where you're annotating these questions a minute per question. But right now, take your time. So go ahead and pause, and then you're going to insert your answer into Edpuzzle. All right, so you should have already entered your answer into Edpuzzle. So we are now going to go over what the answers should be and the tips to finding that answer, right? So apparently I can't always click. Sorry, guys. There we go. One day I'm going to figure out why my laptop doesn't talk to Screencastify very well. Anyway, so tips for question 1. First off, this stimulus is a passage. It is that type of stimulus. It's not just a quote. It's not just a piece of artwork. It's not the famous box from a couple of years ago where literally they gave a box and that was your stimulus. But of course, there's markings on the box or things to look at on the box that would help people. So trust me, you get some curveballs here. The answer to question number 1 is B. So hopefully that is what you put into Edpuzzle. For picking the answer choice for B, you are going here with which choice most matches the passage provided. The passage that you're given is never random. So hopefully, as you read through, Christianity grew in popularity in the centuries after it was founded because B, it appealed to the masses because of its message of equality. Where in the passage would you have annotated that you saw equality? Well, it is the whole Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. That shows that those that suffer, that their lives have as much meaning as the wealthy and the powerful. So, he's not saying, blessed are the rich. Blessed are the kings. He is literally talking to everyone. Because the one thing that kind of unifies us, no matter how much money we have in our bank account, is our life experiences. None of us can have a perfect life. So that is definitely B. It is the message of equality. So with that, you might think other choices are correct. And sometimes you'll be like, but Miss Rose, this letter is completely right. And I'd have to say, well, yeah, I can see that. But you need to pick the answer that most directly reflects what's in the passage. All right. So let's look at question, number 2 from the same passage. All right. The answer is D. So hopefully you answered questions 1 and 2 on your Edpuzzle, and hopefully they are these answers. So basically the interesting thing about this question. So again, number 2 was the message in the passage would be most similar to the teachings of the founder of which other religion? Now, this is the one where, if you have used your past reading of this week, and actually we did a comparison on religions like Monday, hopefully you would connect with the fact, with that chart I gave you, as well as your reading, that we've already established with question number one, this question is really about equality, that the only other religion that talked about equality and getting rid of a hierarchy or a reincarnation system or any other limiting factor was Buddhism. So remember, Hinduism, the reason why it never really left India as a universalizing religion is the fact that it was tied to a very Indian-based social system, which was called the caste system, caste system. And obviously you can use caste, like I broke my arm, so I'm now impeded, by my caste, to help you remember the caste system. And that is was basically given in Hinduism, through the Varnas, in the Indus River Valley, as it kind of grew there, as a way to bring order and chaos. So basically they started, as the religion was growing, they established these very strict rules of living. And it had a hierarchy system. And of course, Buddha, when he came, his idea was to reach out and say everyone was welcome to maybe skip all these rebirths and become one with the Brahman. So the only answer there for number 2, D, is about Buddhism. Now, the thing is number 2 anywhere in the passage? No. So a lot of times students will say, I love MCQs, Ms. Rose, because I don't need to know anything. The answers are all in the passage. Not with this one, right? It is tempting to think that the answers are in the stimulus and you don't need to know content, that all these reading quizzes that I am torturing you with are needless. Wrong. You must know your content. You have to know your content, 100%. So making sure that, you are kind of keeping up with that content. So when we're looking ahead to Monday for your big reading quiz, it is so important that you really read and know and drill that content, because the content is what you draw from when you do an MCQ. All right. So this next one, I'm going to make myself smaller. We are going to, there we go. Look at this one. So the source is the Hadith, which is a collection of sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. And so if you know any prior knowledge, you will know that we're going to be looking at Islam, right? And could be anything about Muslims. So here, the source is the Hadith, and it is this lovely statement. The Prophet said, seek knowledge, even in China. So the question says, the teaching above best explains which historical development in the Islamic world? A, the sponsorship of innovation and exchange in Dar al-Islam. B, the establishment of universal education in Islamic states. C, Islamic scholars were prevented from studying subjects not mentioned in the Hadith. D, Arabic unified Dar al-Islam as the sole language of the Quran. So go ahead, pause, annotate, look at the question and the phrasing. And then the next thing that's going to happen to you is you will be entering your answer into Edpuzzle. All right, so you should have answered this lovely question. So I'm going to move myself forward a little bit. I'm going to put myself down. There we go. So hopefully the answer that you selected was A. There you go. There we go. So for A, I'm looking back at the question here. All right. The Prophet said, seek knowledge, even in China, right? So the teaching above best explains which historical development in the Islamic world. The answer is A, the sponsorship of innovation and exchange in Dar al-Islam. So if you have the prior content knowledge that stuck with you, you would know that Dar al-Islam means house of Islam or house of peace. The idea was born from basically the fact that Islamic scholars, like when they're saying house of Islam, it's not about like just the community of believers, like we would say church is our house of worship. They're talking about the fact that Muslims really anywhere when they are ruling in a country, that they have the ability to be the ruling elite of that nation or that area, and that Islam can be the practicing dominant faith. So when you're looking at the question again, the sponsorship and innovation exchange in Dar al-Islam, if we know that this is the idea that Muslims can practice their faith as the ruling elite, this one quote here, this quote stimulus states, seek knowledge even in China. So we're looking here about Islam is helping bring that innovation and exchange of knowledge. So you're even in China, you can exchange knowledge. You can have innovation as maybe you establish yourself and become a leader, an elite in this group. When you're looking at the other thing, seek knowledge even in China. We know from content knowledge that China will never be an Islamic state fully. And this question, because again, you're tempted to think, oh, seek knowledge means education, right? But remember that we know that the answer that you choose has to be historically accurate. And we know that we are not going to have an Islamic state in China necessarily. The Prophet is saying, seek knowledge even in China. Like, go use our state of peace to establish a connection with China and then see where it goes. But we historically know, because, Muhammad didn't know that China wouldn't become Islamic. So his statement isn't saying, oh, well, we are Dar al-Islam and that's going to be China. You have to use your historical context. You have to know that China doesn't, become an Islamic state. So B isn't going to be, because China is not an Islamic state, doesn't really connect. C, Islamic scholars were prevented from studying subjects not mentioned in the Hadith. Where does this whole where does that, that's not really coming in here at all. And Arabic unified Dar al-Islam is the sole language of the Quran. That is a very misleading sentence in terms of what truly is a language for the Quran, which we know is in Arabic. So it's throwing in Dar al-Islam just to be like, oh, here we go, we're throwing in a statement. So you have to really read all of this. So like I said, you may have put in B because B looks correct, right? It looks like it's talking about education by seeking knowledge, but you have to be historically accurate. And so that's why we do big picture, big geography history. You see how we're doing the building blocks, but then we have to look at kind of like the results, even if it's present day results, to know what the answers are going to be, which is why these are a beast of a question, right? These are not your simple multiple choice questions. All right, next. All right, so I'm going to move myself out of the way again. There we go. Oop, hold on. All right, so question 4. Let's read through together before you answer. Source, the laws of Manu. Also Manau, depending on the spelling. Ancient legal text of Hinduism. So in this text, let's read it real fast. The Brahmin, the Kshatriya, and the Vaishya castes are the twice-born ones, but the fourth, the Sudra, has one birth only. But for the sake of the prosperity of the worlds, the Creator caused the Brahmin, the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, and the Sudra to proceed from his mouth, his arms, his thighs, and his feet. But in order to protect the universe, he, the most resplendent one, assigned separate duties and occupations to those who sprang from his mouth, arms, thighs, and feet. So the question for number 4 is, the passage best supports which characteristic of Hindu states? A, they emphasize communal good over individualism. B, the individuals are encouraged to seek enlightenment regardless of caste. C, they observe a strict social hierarchy. D, rulers are expected to live according to codes of the ancient Indian civilizations. All right, go ahead, pause and annotate away. Do all the hard work. All right, you guys are back because you have annotated and you have answered an Edpuzzle. So let's take a look at what your answer, I'm going to get my packet open here, and annotations should be, right? So, of course, my mouse is being so, there we go. The answer is, question 1. Oh, I wonder if it's been saying that the whole time. I'm so sorry, guys. Question 4 is C. So apologies if I'm catching a typo. When I use the same layout designing my slides, I must have missed that. I mean, it's not like it's not almost midnight here. Anyway, the answer is C, which is they observe a strict social hierarchy. And, when you're going through and annotating, if you really had paid attention, which, as I said, this is a big course, so doing these practice questions kind of bring out what content you really need to kind of hold on to. But when you're looking at the caste system, we know that it's based on reincarnation. So Sudras, if they are the best Sudra they've ever been, they would die and be reborn and then be Vaishyas. And then the Vaishyas will then die. And then if they've been great, they'll be reborn and they could be in the Kshatriyas. And then the Kshatriyas, which are the warrior class, would then be would die and be reborn in the Brahmin class, which is basically the priests and the great elders and the educated scribes. So it goes in this hierarchy, and it's all tied to rebirth, which is why Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, when he became the Buddha, his goal was not to start a whole other faith that would become a universalizing religion, but he was basically trying to get rid of the hierarchy and bring equality to the Hindu faith so that people didn't have to be reborn all the time. They could just have nirvana and become enlightened in this life and have that relationship with God or the many gods in this lifetime. So he's taken away that whole hierarchy. But obviously we can see with the answer of C, they observe a strict social hierarchy. Going back to what I said earlier, life when we became agricultural and we built cities, that is when everything changed. All of a sudden, men start dominating. We start enslaving people. We have warfare, all because of resources and the hard work that goes into actually farming. It's back-breaking work. So, and people are dying and there's floods and all these things are happening. So leaders look for ways to ensure their power and to create order in society. And one trend we will be learning this year is how people are willing to give up freedoms in order to have less chaos in their lives. So that is where the strict social hierarchy of the caste system, this whole passage is about the caste system. So if you've forgotten what that was from reading, or even the mention of it in my Steve Heimler video that I shared with you guys earlier last week, this right here, this whole passage, the laws of Manu, are the establishment of the caste system. And on a side note, just for fun, if you guys have ever, I'm so tired, ever like looked at Netflix? Duh, yes, you have. That sentence was wrong. But there is a Netflix series called like Indian arranged marriage. I'd have to go back and look, but it is fascinating because in India today, FYI, the caste system is illegal. It was ruled as not great for human rights and too limiting and creating prejudice. Because unfortunately, even though this is a whole based in religion and be the best Sudra and be the best Kshatriya, people get really hung up on their classes and their arranged marriages and and how do you keep your power within a certain class. So that is a whole, like they've done season 1. It is a really fascinating watch. So just a side note, if you ever need something to watch Indian arranged marriages. I'd have to get the new name. But anyway, that's my little random tangent for you. So hopefully you'll understand why C is correct. The biggest thing here is looking at when you're annotating not only your passage, but you're annotating your question, you should look at the fact that this says according to the passage, ... So, this passage best supports which character. So this passage is not according to the passage, but you can see that it says this passage. It's not asking you about your prior knowledge. It's going to ask you a question about something that was said in this document. This is a very unique type of question because this is when you could end up having multiple right answers in A, B, C, and D. But only one will be considered the right one because it's actually reflected in the document. Okay, so it's actually reflected in the document. So when you're looking at these, they emphasize communal goods over individualism. That's not there. Individuals are encouraged to seek enlightenment regardless of caste. That's not there because that would be Buddhism. And we don't really see that, obviously, in the laws of Manu. And then rulers are expected to live according to the codes of ancient Indian civilizations. That's not completely incorrect because we are mentioning in here the Brahmin, and they would be where your leadership, your rulers are coming from. But you have to pick the one that's reflected in the doc. And obviously, that's what C is. So these could be the most frustrating type of MCQs, the ones where you could have multiple right answers, but you have to critically think your way to the one right one. Again, another hairline where it's like 48% could be this way, 50% this way. You're going to, sometimes you're not going to win that battle with me. Sometimes I'm sympathetic and I'm like, oh, College Board, really poorly written question. And other times I'm like, suck it up, buttercup. This is the AP class. You have to learn how to critically think. So we will, you'll have a lot of fun with these according to the passage. So just hang in there. The biggest tip there, though, is don't overthink it. Don't think an answer is too simple. So many students every year, I get it. Miss Rose, I should have picked A. It just seemed too like I didn't even have to think about it. And I'm like, that's great. That means you actually are knowing the content. So don't doubt yourself. So don't overthink it. And don't think something's too simple because it might just mean it's correct. All right, so last question of the day for us. So I'm going to move my big face out of the way. Which of the following best explains how Confucianism led to innovations like the one pictured above? A, young people were encouraged to question authority and seek creative solutions. B, I'm sorry, let me just rephrase because the pictures below the question, so I kind of just automatically went to the top. Notice that this is a source from the earliest printed book in China from 868 Common Era. And yes, let me just refer, I'm sure you're going, Ms. Rose, I can barely understand this photo. Well, obviously you can kind of see there's like one main person and then there's a lot of guys, all around him. These questions are hard. Sometimes even when they're copied into the test, they're not clear copies. So sometimes you're going to have to even go on content knowledge to get your way out of this mess. Okay? So just keep that in mind. So going back to the question, A, young people were encouraged to question authority and seek creative solutions. B, the civil service exam incentivized education for men across China. C, networks of exchange connected China to other innovative states across Afro-Eurasia. D, the emperor surrounded himself with a diverse group of advisors that brought ideas from various civilizations and cultures. So go ahead, annotate away, try to figure out what's on this picture, and then answer the question on Edpuzzle. All righty, you've answered the question on Edpuzzle. So let's see. Survey says that the answer for number 5 is B, right? So let me flip to my number B, by number B. So a couple things here when you're analyzing the source, you should see the date. You should note the date is 868 Common Era because that could be helpful to you. Also, if you had annotated the question, you might have underlined Confucianism, right? Confucianism led to innovations like the one pictured above. And so you're probably going, well, what's the innovation? So this is where you're going to have to draw on some content knowledge in order to help you get through this type of question. So simply, the biggest thing here with annotation is pay attention to what is being asked. And here it is Confucianism, right? Anything else that could also be right may not be able to be something you should choose because the clue here is Confucianism, right? So first note, there's only men in the picture. And hopefully you would at least be able to pick that out. And that might take more of a critical eye that you will develop over the entire year. So there's only men in this snapshot in 868, AD, right? So this image only has men in it. No picture of a network of exchange across Afro-Eurasia. We're not seeing any of that. Sorry for my typo on the spelling of across. I just caught that as I flipped it on, so my apologies. And young people actually implies two genders. It's not saying young men. So when you're kind of looking at these questions and we go through them together, so like young people were encouraged to question authority and seek creative solutions. When you have more of a context of Chinese history that we learned this year, women have been battling for equality in China for centuries. So there is no way that, for the most part, out of like one or two like female, like in history documented empresses, we do not have women being asked to do anything except bind their feet and shuffle around and have their independence limited. So A doesn't work just by wording. B is obviously the answer. The civil service exam incentivized education for men across China. So again, when you have the full context of Confucianism was about the 5 primary relationships. And the ideas of Confucius being not that it's a religion, but a philosophy, Confucianism became the basis of Chinese government. And the way, and Confucius kind of was radical for his time, because it used to always be that you were born into your positions, very much like the European view. It was all about your title. It was all about your bloodline, all that stuff. Confucius actually said, his wisdom happened around a time when China was constantly fighting within itself, fighting each other for power and whatnot. And he was like, okay, you know what? It looks like people that are born into things don't always make great decisions. So maybe we should go by our merit. And so, Confucianism kind of established a meritocracy where if you could earn your way to something, then, your title was in your grasp. And so the civil service exam in China is based on a lot of Confucian ideals, and you had to pass this major test in order to have a government position. And that was all for men, not for women. So C, in the networks of exchange connected China to other innovative states across Afro-Eurasia, we don't see really any evidence of that in this picture. So hopefully you can easily eliminate that. And D, the emperor surrounded himself with a diverse group of advisors that brought ideas from various civilizations and cultures. That is great. That could easily be what's in that photo. But guess what the question said? Best explains how Confucianism led to innovations like the one pictured above, people coming together to learn together. That eliminates D from it being a choice. So hopefully that makes some sense for you guys. So with that, we are done. But obviously this was just a very brief introduction to MCQs. So we'll have more practice to come throughout the entire year. It will be frustrating work. Some days you will come out with like your fists up and you're like, yes, I did it. And then other times you're going to come out and you're going to be like, Miss Rose is crazy. I should have gotten B. She said it was only C, and whatever. And I'm just going to be like, sorry, this is part of the critical thinking development. So happy reading this weekend of chapter 2. Please, please, please. I hope at least this exercise showed you know your content. So anyway, with that, and I just realized I hope I actually was seen on that last one. But with that, good to see you. I'm going to head to bed in just a second. And let me know when you have any questions, but you're on your way to getting some more skills before we hit Unit 1 next week. So God bless you guys. I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for always doing your best, even when you don't want to. See ya.